The emperor, Ling Yao, is face blind. I have been in the palace for 3 years, yet he has never been able to recognize me. That day, he calmly ascended the dragon throne and coldly instructed me.
As the emperor, it is only right to expand the imperial harem. I must spread my favor, Empress. You must be magnanimous.
And so, the absurd days began. Once, while I was watering flowers in the imperial garden, he saw my beauty and immediately ordered me to be brought into the harem. Another time, while I was riding a horse at the stables, he praised my free spirit and wanted to bring me into the harem again. What was even more ridiculous was when I disguised myself as a commoner to visit a temple fair outside the palace. With a coarse cloth headscarf wrapped around my head and wearing a simple, coarse dress, he actually managed to find me based solely on the scent of my incense. Waving his folding fan, he approached and said,
"This young lady has such charming features. I wonder if you are betrothed."
Suppressing my laughter, I feigned shyness and said, in response to the young master, "This humble woman is already married." He fell silent for a moment, then, with a face full of regret, actually said,
"I am not a vile man who would break up someone else's family, but may I make so bold as to ask, when will your husband die?"
I almost spat out the sugar figurine in my mouth right then and there. I quickly covered my mouth, my shoulders shaking uncontrollably, pretending to be overcome with grief and sorrow, when in reality, I was barely holding back my laughter. He thought he had touched a raw nerve, and a hint of pity actually appeared in his eyes. He added another line.
"Do not be afraid, young lady. If he truly treats you poorly, I will stand up for you."
My father is a veteran minister of 3 reigns. Years ago, during Ling Yao's struggle for the throne, my father backed the wrong side and allied with the deposed crown prince. Ling Yao has held a grudge to this day. The year of my hair-pinning ceremony, he issued an imperial decree marrying me into the palace. He called it a great favor, but in truth, it was revenge, ruining my betrothal to the heir of the Duke of Zhen. I secretly rolled my eyes. It was bad enough that this man was face blind, but he was also so black-hearted. Initially, he wanted to title me a lady of handsome fairness, but then he heard that a lady of handsome fairness does not have to deal with harem chores and only needs to pay respects to the Empress daily, whereas the Empress can only rest after all the concubines have finished paying their respects. To rest, it seemed more like he was finding me an easy, leisurely job. So, he overrode all objections and made me Empress. But he forgot that at the time the harem was completely empty. The so-called morning greetings were just me paying respects to myself. Every morning, I would sit on the Empress's throne, looking at the empty hall. Wang Qing would stand by my side, going through the motions with me. Over time, it actually became a bizarre sight in the palace. Occasionally, I would ask Wang Qing to pretend to be a consort and pay respects to me just to relieve the boredom, but she would always refuse with a smile, saying she feared offending the Empress's dignity. Before half a month had passed, Ling Yao also realized something was off. Once again, sitting on the dragon throne, he repeated to me with a stern face,
"Empress, do not harbor any illusions about us. As the emperor, we must expand the imperial harem. You must be magnanimous."
He went on, lecturing endlessly. My personal maid, Wang Qing, who was standing beside me, could not bear to listen any longer. With a thud, she fell to her knees and kowtowed.
"Your Majesty, spare my life. This servant is Her Majesty, the Empress's personal maid. Her Majesty went to the side hall to touch up her makeup and ordered this servant to wait here."
Ling Yao pinched the bridge of his nose in frustration, yet his face showed not the slightest hint of embarrassment. He said with utmost seriousness,
"We knew that, of course. We were merely having you pass on the message. In the future, whether it is you or anyone else, you must introduce yourselves first upon seeing us, lest we mistake your identity."
Wang Qing nodded, repeatedly, murmuring yes, 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 without stopping. Only then did Ling Yao flick his sleeves and leave with an air of pretense. As he left, he did not forget to turn back and instruct,
"Tell the Empress to hurry up. We are still waiting to discuss taking in new consorts with her."
As a result, just as he stepped out of the hall door, he ran right into me, who had just come out of the side hall. He was taken aback for a moment. He immediately switched to a gentle tone.
"Are you a lady from the Empress's palace? Pass a message to the Empress for me. Tell her I am looking for her to discuss selecting concubines."
"Your Majesty, I am the Empress." His face instantly turned red. He coughed twice, turned around and ran off, almost missing his step on the stairs. Later, in the imperial garden, he ran into me again while I was pruning flower branches. Having learned from the incident with Wang Qing, he deliberately stopped his pace. First, he had the eunuchs wait in the distance while he strode toward me himself. It had to be said, Ling Yao was truly handsome, with sharp brows, starry eyes, and a face like fine jade, which complemented his tall and upright posture. He indeed possessed an imperial majesty. No wonder he could captivate so many noble ladies. Just as I was about to curtsy to greet him, he reached out to support my hand, his eyes filled with a smile.
As the saying goes, A graceful lady is a fit mate for a gentleman. You are the most pleasing woman I have ever met in my life.
As a woman who had lived a sheltered life in her boudoir, even though I had long known about his face blindness, being confessed to in public by such a handsome emperor still made me blush and my heart flutter. Even his rudeness and malice from a few days ago were completely cast to the back of my mind. We set up a small table by the lake, drinking wine, reciting poetry, and chatting with great joy, until he suddenly blurted out,
The Empress is vulgar and boring, far less gentle and graceful than you.
"Oh boy." His face blindness was acting up again. Flirting with girls behind my back was one thing, but he actually put me down to my face. Before Ling Yao left, he specifically asked about my family background, saying he wanted to make me a consort. I deliberately lied. "In response to your majesty, I am Chu Yuhi, the third daughter of Minister Li's household." That very night, the imperial decree to confer the title of consort was delivered to Minister Li's residence. Minister Li searched his entire estate, but could not find even a maid named Chu Yuhe. He was so anxious that he almost hanged himself. Upon learning of this, Ling Yao was absolutely furious. He was convinced that Secretary Li had hidden his daughter away. For several days in a row, he gave Secretary Li the cold shoulder. He made things even more difficult for him during court sessions. One moment, he ordered him to copy the Analects of Confucius 100 times. The next, he sent him to manage the sewage in the suburbs of the capital. Secretary Li was already advanced in years. After copying the Analects 100 times, his hand was nearly broken. Then he had to go manage the sewage in the suburbs. He ended up covered in mud and in a wretched state. The ministers at court saw all of this, yet no one dared to plead on his behalf. After all, everyone knew the emperor was currently vexed over the matter of Chu Yuhe. Secretary Li was so worried that his hair turned white. Every day he burned incense and prayed to the Buddha in his manner, begging for Chu Yuhe to show herself. Ling Yao's personal eunuch, Xiao Luzi, really couldn't bear to watch any longer.
Your Majesty, that day in the Imperial Garden, aside from Her Majesty the Empress, there were no other women at all.
Ling Yao suddenly saw the light. Gnashes his teeth, he said.
So it was that liar of an empress who lost my A.
Beside me, Wang Qing was deeply worried. She tugged at my sleeve and whispered,
Your Majesty, if the emperor finds out you lied to him, won't he be angry?
I looked up at the sky, sighed, and shrugged my shoulders. If he is angry, so be it. We'll talk when he can actually recognize my face. Anyway, he can't remember who is who. Moreover, watching Secretary Li and Ling Yao, each looking so miserable and worried, I actually find it quite amusing. In fact, before entering the palace, I already knew about the grievances between the emperor and my family. Ever since I was born, my mother forced me to study the zither, chess, calligraphy, painting, embroidery, and household management. I was originally meant to marry the heir of the Duke of Zhen. My mother cried night after night, fearing I would be neglected by Ling Yao after marrying into the palace. To avoid making her feel bad, I cried along with her, wailing, "Mother, your daughter's life is so bitter." But the moment I turned around, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. All men in the world are pretty much equally unreliable. Rather than marrying a son of a noble family, it is better to marry the man with the greatest power. At least I can enjoy endless wealth and honor. Why not? Sure enough, after marrying Ling Yao, I didn't have to do any work, except for the lack of explicit love. I got everything: fine clothes, gourmet food, wealth, and honor, as well as absolute authority in the imperial harem. Oh, actually, that is not true. It wasn't completely devoid of the sparks of love. At least every time he mistook my identity, he was quite nice to me. He would even bring me snacks from outside the palace, although every time he would ask,
Do you like eating this? I remember he likes it.
but I didn't mind. As long as there was food, it was fine. The day I went to the imperial paddock to ride horses again, I ran into Ling Yao again. He was dressed in black riding attire, looking athletic and noble. He had shed the majesty of his imperial robes, showing a bit more youthful vigor. He sat tall and straight on his horse, his eyes full of confidence and high spirits. Watching him, I actually lost myself for a moment. I deliberately slowed down, waiting for him to come over. I wanted to see if this time he would mistake my identity again. Sure enough, he strode toward me, muttering to himself,
This woman is free, spirited, and cheerful. She can be granted the rank of concubine.
Clearly, he didn't recognize me again. He patiently taught me how to ride, gently explaining equestrian techniques. When his fingertips occasionally brushed against my wrist, my face flushed with heat. Just as I was about to confess my identity, he slowly spoke again.
As the saying goes, A gentle and graceful lady is a fitting mate for a gentleman. You are the most pleasing woman I have ever met in my life.
My mind was full of question marks, and I silently complained in my heart. How many people had he said this line to? He said it to Liu A'cui last time, to me when I was practicing archery the time before last, and to me when I was pruning flower branches the time before that. So, this is his only love line. My heart instantly grew cold. It is all because my father never let me meet other men since childhood, which made me so naive and inexperienced, allowing myself to be fooled by him time and again. I deliberately pulled hard on the reins. The horse suddenly reared up on its hind legs, scaring Ling Yao so much he almost fell off. I feigned panic. "Please forgive me, Your Majesty." He held onto the saddle, his face pale, yet he still forced himself to look calm.
It is fine, take it slow. I will accompany you.
I ran back to the Su manor crying, seeking out my father to complain, but my father was also full of bitterness, saying that Ling Yao had also confessed his feelings to him back then. I was shocked, my eyes wide as I asked, "What? Ling Yao even confessed to you?" "Father, you have a face full of beard and are over 50 years old. He could actually fancy you. He must have been truly desperate." My father sighed and slowly recounted an old story.
Lord Su, rest assured, if I ascend the throne in the near future, the position of Prime Minister will surely be yours.
Thank you, Your Highness.
At that time, Ling Yao had not yet ascended the throne and was a master at making empty promises. My father had started as an ordinary scholar and climbed all the way to the position of Vice Minister of the Ministry of Personnel, enduring endless cold shoulders and exclusion. Once he gained Ling Yao's appreciation, he was naturally deeply grateful and followed his lead blindly, wishing he could pour his heart out to him, until one day he went to visit Minister Li's manor. He accidentally got caught in the rain and changed into Minister Li's clothes. Ling Yao, who arrived later, mistook him for Minister Li and spoke those familiar words.
Minister Li, rest assured, if I ascend the throne in the near future, the position of Prime Minister will surely be yours.
My father's beard trembled with anger on the spot. He pointed at Ling Yao's nose and questioned him.
Does Your Highness still remember Vice Minister Su by Xuan Wu Pool?
But Ling Yao had a blank look on his face.
Why bring up Vice Minister Su? His talent is mediocre, unfit to be Prime Minister.
My father had an upright nature. Upon hearing this, he went to align himself with the 5th prince that very night, and because of this, he topped Ling Yao's blacklist. I laughed so hard I couldn't stand up straight after hearing this. "Dad, so you were actually the first one. Of all the people he fooled, it seems his face blindness has been a chronic issue for a long time." After returning to the palace, I continued to eat and drink as usual. Occasionally, when I was bored out of my mind, I would deliberately wander around in front of Ling Yao, just to watch him mistake my identity. Sometimes, I dressed up as a maid, sometimes as a concubine, and sometimes even as a eunuch, deliberately loitering in front of him just to see his puzzled face as he tried hard to recognize me. I found it incredibly amusing. Wang Sheng always warned me that this was too risky and that it would be trouble if Ling Yao found out, but I didn't care at all. He couldn't even remember my face, so how could he possibly find out? To my surprise, he had gotten smarter this time. Just as he was about to show that lustful look of his, he first turned to ask Xiao Luzi.
This woman is so free, spirited that she has a unique charm. Who is she?
Xiao Luzi bowed and reported,
Your Majesty, she is the Empress.
His face instantly darkened. He pointed at my clothes and demanded,
Why are you wearing a maid's clothes? How improper.
I blinked, pretending to be innocent. Then I shall take them off now. Ling Yao instantly became angry and flustered. He pointed at me for a long time, unable to speak a word. His face turned red, and in the end he could only fling his sleeves and walk away. Before leaving, he didn't forget to throw back a line.
Utterly ridiculous.
He was so angry that his steps were a bit flurried. Xiao Luzi secretly gave me a wink from behind him, with a hint of a smile he couldn't hold back on his lips. But after taking a few steps, he turned back to caution me.
Don't actually take them off. It is bad if you catch a cold.
Looking at his retreating figure, I laughed so hard I couldn't stand up straight. This face-blind emperor, who is harsh in words but soft in heart, is actually quite cute. Soon, it was time to flip the name tablets. Xiao Luzi presented the tablets. Looking at the only tablet in front of him, Ling Yao was so angry, he almost spat blood. How could it be that after working so hard for so long, the plan to expand the imperial harem had made no progress at all? There was still only the Empress in the harem. Ling Yao slammed the nameplate onto the ground. He kept muttering under his breath, useless, good for nothing. Xiao Luzi stood to the side, trembling with fear, not daring to say a single word. Ling Yao pointed at me and ordered sternly,
You are not allowed to appear before me for the next 2 months. Out of sight, out of mind.
Just as he finished saying this, he spotted Wang Qing standing behind me.
And you are not allowed to appear before me either, lest I mistake you for someone else.
Wang Qing looked aggrieved, but she could only comply. I ran back to Changle Palace, sobbing and crying, but inside, I was absolutely thrilled. As soon as I entered, I turned and instructed Wang Qing, "Quick, pack up and dress as commoners. We're going out of the palace to have some fun." While wiping away non-existent tears, I urged Wang Qing to hurry up and pack, terrified that Ling Yao might change his mind. Wang Qing shook her head helplessly, smilingly teasing me for saying one thing but meaning another. Yet she still hurried to pack our things. "This is absolutely wonderful. I won't look for him, and he won't look for me. We really are a husband and wife with perfect understanding," Wang Qing said helplessly.
Your Highness, the Emperor ordered you not to appear before him for 2 months. If you go out of the palace and run into him, it will be a big trouble.
What is there to fear? He has face blindness. Even if we run into each other, he won't recognize me. I never in a million years expected that Ling Yao had also left the palace just to avoid me. I walked to the riverbank, which was surrounded by all kinds of festive lanterns. The lights reflected on the shimmering water, making it incredibly lively. Holding a sweet-scented osmanthus lantern, I carefully lit it, silently praying for the safety of the Su family and a peaceful life for myself. Just as I was about to place the lantern into the river, a familiar figure walked toward me. Ling Yao waved his folding fan, his almond eyes curving with a smile, as he asked that same old question, "My lady, are you betrothed?" I looked left, right, up, and down, confirming there was no one else around before realizing he was indeed speaking to me. I grumbled to myself, the heavens must be blind. How on earth did he manage to find me so precisely in this crowd? I lowered my eyes and deliberately repeated, "This humble woman is already wed. Please do not pester me further, sir." Surely he won't try to strike up a conversation again after this. He froze for a moment, a flash of disappointment crossing his eyes. Then, frowning, he called out to stop me as I was about to slip away, as if making a difficult decision.
I won't be a homewrecker, nor will I break up your family. But would it be convenient to ask when your husband might die?
I was shocked on the spot. This situation had already escalated to the point of getting my entire clan executed. Watch your words, young master.
My lady, if he treated you well, he would naturally have accompanied you to release lanterns tonight.
His tone was filled with indignation, as if he were truly standing up for me against an injustice. The pity in his eyes didn't seem fake either. Looking at his serious expression, I secretly schemed in my heart, why not take this opportunity to tease him and see just how far he would go? Standing under the tree, I said with deep meaning, "My husband is indeed not a good man. On the second day of our marriage, he wanted to take a concubine. On ordinary days, he beats and scolds me even more. But his family is powerful, and there is nothing I can do. I can only swallow my anger and bear it." Ling Yao spat indignantly.
Bah, what a scumbag. A man like that deserves to die.
After saying this, he sneezed, but the look in his eyes as he watched me held a touch more heartache. His tone softened as well. "You've suffered." Suppressing a laugh, I thought to myself, "Your Majesty, you are cursing yourself." By the time I sensed something was off, he had already grabbed me by the wrist. He said eagerly,
Divorce him. I will help you. No one will dare bully you.
His grip was very strong, making my wrist hurt a little, but the urgency and sincerity in his tone did not seem fake. Looking at his serious face, I felt a secret sense of helplessness. If I really got a divorce, where would I go to enjoy a life of leisure as Empress? But Ling Yao took it seriously and said, unable to let it go,
Stay by my side tonight. Don't misunderstand. I'm just afraid I'll forget what you look like and won't be able to find you in the future.
He even went out of his way to buy me a candied hawthorn stick and handed it to me.
I heard girls all like to eat this. Give it a try.
The candied hawthorns were bright red, coated in a thick layer of sugar syrup. It looked mouthwatering. I took the stick and took a bite. The sweetness instantly spread to the bottom of my heart, and I completely forgot about having to play the victim. A smile unconsciously curved up the corners of my mouth. He sent someone to fetch the carriage. Seeing that I couldn't break free, I took advantage of his distraction and bit his wrist. I didn't bite too hard, but it was enough to make him let go in pain. I turned and ran, laughing as I did. Looking back, I saw him standing there dazed, clutching his wrist with a bewildered look on his face. I have to say, there are benefits to face blindness. Even if I stood right in front of him, he might not recognize me. It is like committing a crime right in front of a witness who can't identify you. But who would have thought that the next day he would block me at the entrance of the inn? I was wearing a thin white veil that covered most of my face, leaving only my eyes exposed. I thought this would prevent him from recognizing me, but to my surprise, he still recognized me at a single glance. Even funnier, he was holding a skewer of candied hawthorns in his hand. Upon seeing me, he said,
I guessed you liked these. I bought them especially for you. Don't run away this time.
He grabbed my wrist and demanded,
Are you still thinking about that scumbag? Why are you so foolish?
I was stunned, and his attendant quickly chimed in to persuade me.
My lady, you are truly blessed. You have helped His Majesty solve a problem that has troubled him for years.
Ling Yao suddenly tightened his grip on my wrist, his eyes incredibly earnest.
I can't remember anyone else yet. I can remember your face. We are indeed a match made in heaven.
If I hadn't been fooled by him twice before, I might have actually believed him. I composed myself and made up my mind. I must never let Ling Yao find out that I am the Empress. Otherwise, my peaceful days will be over. At worst, I'll just wear heavy makeup in the palace and try my best to avoid him. I pulled my hand back and feigned determination. I appreciate your feelings, my lord, but as long as my husband is still alive, I will never leave him. This is my duty as a wife. I deliberately emphasized the word husband, my eyes filled with absolute resolve, hoping to make him back down. But Ling Yao acted as if he didn't understand. Instead of giving up, a flash of ruthlessness crossed his eyes.
Then we'll find a way to get rid of him. I'll help you.
I wondered to myself, getting rid of yourself, is that really okay? He insisted on asking where my husband's family was and who my husband was, looking determined not to stop until he made me a widow. I deliberately gave a vague answer. My husband is a powerful man. You can't afford to offend him. It is best if you don't meddle in my business. But he replied with a proud look.
There is no one in this world I cannot afford to offend.
In the end, I really couldn't win the argument, so I had to compromise. I agreed to stay at his villa in the west of the city for a month. During this time, he could not ask about my whereabouts or investigate my family affairs. If he could still remember what I looked like after a month, I would go home, divorce my husband, and marry him. I was calculating, in my mind. A month would be more than enough time for me to come up with a countermeasure. Besides, with his face blindness, he might forget all about me in a few days. When I returned to the imperial palace, I was breaking out in a cold sweat. Just as I sat down and took a sip of tea, the maid announced the arrival of the emperor. With a whoosh, I dove under the blanket, wrapping myself up so tightly that I didn't even dare to show my head. Wang Qing was trying to hold back her laughter nearby.
Your Grace, your reaction was way too fast.
I lowered my voice. Don't laugh. If he recognizes me, I'm finished. The moment Ling Yao stepped through the door, his gaze turned cold.
The Empress is putting on more and more of an attitude. I have come in, yet you won't even show your face. Are you hiding from me on purpose?
I squeezed my throat, pretending to sound weak and frail. Didn't your Majesty say that within 2 months, I am not to appear before you? I was afraid that if you saw my face, you would feel heartbroken again and be displeased. Ling Yao's tone was firm.
That is why I came here myself. I said you are not to appear, but I never said I couldn't come to see you.
I grumbled to myself, oh, so that is how it works. People who are emperors are just so double standard. He even leaned close to the bed and reached out to feel the blanket.
Why are you wrapped up so tightly? Are you sick?
My heart warmed slightly, but I still braced myself to speak. I am fine. I was just afraid of making your Majesty angry. Ling Yao seemed to think of something, and the corners of his lips curled up. His tone carried a hint of pride.
Next month, I am going to take a consort, and this time it will surely succeed.
My heart skipped a beat and I had a bad premonition. He asked again.
Do you know which noble family she is from?
I deliberately played dumb, lowering my head respectfully. Your Majesty taking a consort is a matter of state. It has nothing to do with me. I only need to remember to prepare the gold jewelry to make sure that lady knows of your Majesty's sincerity. But inside, I was wailing. I'm doomed. When I fooled him before, I told him my name was Liu A'cui. He is planning to marry Liu A'cui. No way. I must personally ruin this marriage. Otherwise, if I am both the Empress and a consort, won't I be competing with myself for favor? When the time comes, I would even have to pay respects to Liu A'cui. Just thinking about it is utterly ridiculous. After Ling Yao left, I immediately ran to the Empress Dowager's palace. I threw myself into her arms and wailed, Imperial Mother, the Emperor is going to take a consort. He wants to marry a commoner woman and depose me. The Empress Dowager patted my back and comforted me in a gentle tone.
Qinghuan, you must understand that since ancient times, no emperor has ever had only one wife. It is only normal to take a few more consorts.
I deliberately went along with her words and said through gritted teeth, I understand. I will go and chop that woman's husband to pieces right now, so she can marry the emperor with peace of mind. The Empress Dowager was startled and quickly pulled me back.
Wait. Come back before you say anything else. Speak slowly, don't be impulsive.
Once I explained the whole story, the Empress Dowager also began to frown. She was already overwhelmed with selecting consorts for Ling Yao. Yet Ling Yao's heart was set only on that Liu A'cui, not even sparing a glance for the noble ladies of the court. What was even funnier was that the Empress Dowager actually asked me,
Is that Liu A'cui more beautiful than you? I would really like to see what kind of woman she is, to make my face-blind grandson so utterly obsessed.
When Ling Yao learned that the Empress Dowager was was still selecting consorts for him. He simply burned all the portraits of the candidates.
What is there to choose? They all look the same. I can't remember them, and I have no interest.
The Empress Dowager's face darkened.
If that is the case, then go and ask that woman if she is willing to marry an emperor with a vast harem, and if she is willing to rank below others.
Ling Yao, however, became even more rebellious. Stiffening his neck, he said,
Imperial Mother, I have lived for 22 years, and it was not easy to finally meet someone different. It is like someone who has eaten only coarse grains for years, suddenly encountering a rare delicacy. I do not mind that she was married before. I only worry that she might mind that I once took a wife.
He even specifically sent Xiao Luzi to inquire about Liu A'cui's preferences. In the end, no matter how much Xiao Luzi inquired, everything turned out to be things I liked. Xiao Luzi was so frustrated he almost wanted to hang himself. The Empress Dowager was so angered that she swayed and almost fell. Ling Yao quickly supported her, sniffed with his nose, and asked in confusion,
Imperial Mother, the scent on you. I seem to have smelled it somewhere before. It is very familiar.
The Empress Dowager closed her eyes, her heart filled with helplessness. That is the incense I use daily. He had memorized even my scent, his Empress. Yet, he simply could not remember my face. Ling Yao frowned, sensing that something was not quite right. A faint sense of unease rose in his heart. He rushed to the villa in the west of the city, hurriedly slipped in through the back door, changed into ordinary clothes, and met me before he could even take a sip of water. The moment he saw me, his furrowed brow instantly smoothed out. He paused for a moment, then softly called out, A'cui. He then made an excuse to cover up his eagerness.
I just feel that things have been unstable lately, so I should come to see you every day, just in case anyone tries to harm you.
He also brought my favorite osmanthus cake and placed it on the table.
I heard you like this, so I had the Imperial kitchen make it especially for you.
Looking at the osmanthus cake, my heart felt both warm and helpless. This face-blind emperor, though unable to remember my face, remembered my preferences with absolute clarity. To me, this was a bolt from the blue. This meant that 24 hours a day, I had to keep a constant eye on Ling Yao's movements, no matter what I was doing. The moment he set off, I had to rush over here immediately to play the role of Liu A'cui. I had originally just wanted to play along half-heartedly to buy some time, but now look what happened. I was completely tied down, without even a single moment to catch my breath. Once, while I was eating hot pot in the palace, I suddenly received word that Ling Yao had gone to the villa. Without even having time to wipe my mouth, I hurriedly changed my clothes and rushed over. As a result, Ling Yao saw the grease on the corner of my mouth. Thinking I was starving, he handed me a handkerchief with a look of pity.
Eat slowly. No one is going to snatch it from you.
But now that things had come to this, I had no choice but to keep up the act. Otherwise, with Ling Yao's temperament, if he ever found out the truth, he would definitely think I was playing him. Not to mention, right to his face, I had said so many bad things about him. I analyzed it to myself. The reason he liked Liu A'cui was probably because since childhood, he had only met noble ladies of the capital, all of whom were dignified and proper. Suddenly encountering a woman neglected by her husband's family, who seemed weak yet possessed a touch of stubbornness, he felt pity for her. Plus, since he could actually remember my face, it was only natural he mistook it for true love. Ling Yao looked at me, his face full of concern.
What happened? Why do you look so pale? Did your husband's family make things difficult for you again? I can help you deal with him. You don't have to be afraid.
I had a sudden brainwave and decided to scare him off so he would back down. I deliberately said, with a fierce look, "No need for your help. I've already killed my husband." He froze for a moment, then raised an eyebrow, looking absolutely delighted.
Good riddance. He deserved to die. Anyone who dares bully my woman deserves such an end.
I struck while the iron was hot. I put on a sinister expression, fully immersing myself in my script. I've never been a good person since I was a child. In winter, my family wouldn't give me a blanket. To keep warm, I set the house on fire. That night, not a single person in the family remained cold. They were all burned nice and warm. My husband didn't want to marry me either. I framed him so I could marry him, but he still protected his sweetheart and neglected me in every possible way. Since that is the case, I decided to let them be a pair of lovebirds in the underworld, never to be parted. The more I spoke, the more invested I became. I even widened my eyes on purpose, trying to look as fierce and malicious as possible. Ling Yao handed me a cup of water and said in a calm tone,
Moisten your throat. Don't make yourself sick with anger.
I asked in confusion, "Aren't you afraid of me? I'm a murderer. Maybe I'll kill you too one day."
In winter, your family took away your blanket. That was heartless and immoral. Your husband married you, yet he did not love you alone. Whether to you or to his beloved, he was disloyal and unjust. They got what they deserved.
He paused, then added,
The one I should fear is someone else.
My heart skipped a beat. Could he have found out something? Suddenly, I felt a chill run down my spine, and a cold sweat broke out on my back. I had no idea who this someone else he spoke of was. Just then, Ling Yao apologized to me, saying he had to return to the palace to handle some personal matters. With that, he strode outside. Before I could even catch my breath, I heard two maids whispering outside the door.
Did you hear what the master just said about the Empress? Did you hear it? It sounded like he wanted to give the Empress an explanation. You must have misheard. Her Majesty is in the Imperial Palace. How could she have anything to do with our master? The master only has Miss A'cui in his heart.
My heart tightened. Oh no. Could he be getting suspicious? I hurriedly changed into my Empress attire, rushed back to the palace, and once again curled up under the covers, pretending to be ill. Before long, Ling Yao entered from outside, looking travel-worn. He looked at the bed, his handsome brow furrowed in a tight knot.
Empress, why are you lying in bed again? Are you pretending to be sick to avoid me again?
Pinching my throat, I feigned weak gasps. Your Majesty said we would not meet for 2 months. I will certainly keep my word, and dare not disobey your Majesty's decree. I am truly sick this time, not pretending. Ling Yao's expression turned a bit awkward. He coughed twice.
Just speak normally. Why are you gasping?
I wanted to cry, but had no tears. Could he blame me? Pretending to be weak is hard work. Not to mention, I had to hold back my laughter, for fear of giving myself away. He coughed twice.
Your Majesty, Crown Prince, I have given this some thought. Your character is quite decent, and you haven't done anything wrong all these years.
I rolled my eyes in my mind. No kidding. Do you really need to state the obvious? I am the most qualified Empress ever. I don't fight for power, and I even play along with your acts. He asked again.
Do you know why I married you?
I grumbled to myself. Why else? To get back at my father, of course. What other reason could there be? Your Majesty is benevolent and remembered the Su family's contributions, which is why you brought me into the palace as your Empress. Ling Yao sat on a chair, resting his hands on his knees as he spoke slowly.
Back then, Minister Su used the fact that I mistook someone's identity to demand this position of Empress from me. I was young at the time, and I didn't know I would come to love someone so deeply in the future, so I casually agreed to his demand.
I understood his meaning instantly. He wants to depose the Empress. Deposing the Empress is no big deal, but if he also brings Liu A'cui into the palace, my secret identity, but if he also brings Liu A'cui into the palace, with so many people here who have seen me, how can I keep up the deception? Playing 2 roles by myself at the same time. I'll be exposed sooner or later. Huddled under the blanket, I was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan, trying desperately to think of a way. I had to stop him from deposing the Empress, and also stop him from marrying Liu A'cui. I've got it. That day, Ling Yao came to the west side of the city to see me again. I no longer rejected his affection and stayed by his side, sharing sweet moments. Occasionally, I would shyly hold his hand and act coquettishly. It actually had a unique kind of charm. Well, to be honest, life as the widow Liu A'cui is actually pretty good. I don't have to deal with the tedious affairs of the harem, and I even get to be pampered by the emperor. It is simply a heavenly life. The only downside is having to constantly watch out so he doesn't recognize me, and running back and forth is absolutely exhausting. Several times Ling Yao hesitated to speak, but finally, he opened his mouth.
A'cui, I have a confession to make. You need to prepare yourself mentally. Don't get too excited and don't be afraid.
I patted my chest, pretending to be calm. Oh, please. I'm someone who has killed her own husband. What kind of major scene have I not witnessed? Go ahead, I can handle it. But my heart was beating like a drum. He couldn't be about to confess that he is the emperor and wants to bring me into the palace, right? Ling Yao took out the imperial seal from his robe and said solemnly,
I am Ling Yao, the emperor of the great Yao dynasty.
I froze on the spot, silently counting to 3 in my head, deliberately pretending to be shocked and pale. My mouth was open wide enough to fit an egg, unable to speak for a long time, but Ling Yao smiled and praised me.
A'cui, you truly have extraordinary courage. You are indeed the person I have set my eyes on. What is wrong? Are you frightened?
I grumbled silently in my heart. Frightened, my foot. I've known all along. But on the surface, I still pretended to be shaken up. I took the opportunity to suffer a sudden, severe illness. My legs went weak, and I collapsed onto the floor, foaming at the mouth, which was actually licorice water I had prepared in advance. Ling Yao panicked instantly. He quickly took me into his arms and cried out, completely at a loss.
A'cui, don't scare me. Wake up. Quickly.
He immediately dragged a doctor inside. The doctor felt my pulse for a moment, shook his head, and pretended to be full of regret.
Young master, Please accept your grief. This young lady has been frightened to death. She has no pulse left. There is nothing more that can be done.
While Ling Yao turned his head to wipe away his tears, I secretly gave the doctor a thumbs up. He was indeed worth the high price I paid. Hired a traveling con artist who could really put on a show. His acting was so professional, even better than mine. Receiving my signal, the doctor got even more into character, more hype, completely losing himself in the performance.
This young lady couldn't catch her breath and suffocated. My lord, you could try giving her mouth to mouth. If she can be saved, it will be a miracle. If not, at least you did your best and will have no regrets.
Lying on the bed, I nearly ground my teeth to dust. I'm faking my death, not drowning. Is mouth to mouth really necessary? That dirty con artist is doing this on purpose to screw me over. Ling Yao chased all the bystanders out of the room. The room became exceptionally quiet. He sat by the bedside and whispered softly,
A'cui, don't blame me. I only did it to save you. Please wake up. Okay?
I wailed in my heart. I'm a dead person, don't come over here. But Ling Yao still leaned down and kissed me. The kiss was very gentle, with a hint of trembling. It wasn't until a few wet drops fell on my face that I realized Ling Yao was crying. He choked out,
Wake up, okay? Whatever you want, I will grant it. Gold, silver, jewels, wealth, and honor. As long as you wake up, I will give you everything. I will never force you to do anything you don't want to do again.
My heart felt both aching and soft, and I silently cursed myself. I'm so bad. I'm really so bad. How could I deceive him like this and make him cry? I wanted to tell him that I was lying to him, that I was fine and he should stop crying, but I was also afraid he would ask me why I lied to him. What would I say then? I couldn't just say, I did it just to play a prank on you, just because I didn't want you to make me your empress, right? As it grew late, I was bursting and desperately needed to use the restroom, but Ling Yao insisted on staying by my bedside to watch over me, even holding my hand and telling me stories, as if I could actually hear them. He went on and on, saying,
I was born in the cold palace, and since I was a child, I suffered from a severe case of face blindness. I couldn't tell anyone apart. When I was young, the maids and eunuchs bullied me. They held me underwater, hung me from trees, and cut my head with knives. I went to my imperial father to complain, but I couldn't even describe who had harmed me. Later, after this happened so many times, I could actually recognize at a glance those who had hurt me, even how many fine lines they had around their eyes. I could remember with absolute clarity. And guess what? Among that crowd of people, there was actually my imperial father.
His voice choked up as he spoke. Hearing this, my heart ached for him too. It turned out this tsundere, face-blind emperor had such a pitiful past. He paused, and his voice softened significantly, carrying a hint of grievance and tenderness.
I don't regret that experience. In the past, my memory was filled with crowds of ugly, malicious faces. But you are different. You are the very first person I wanted to remember. The first person who ever made me feel warm. A'cui, I am telling you all this just to let you know that I like you. From the very first moment I saw you, I liked you very much. It wasn't just a passing whim. It is sincere.
Unfortunately, by the time he finished sharing these heartfelt words, I had long since given in and fallen asleep. Faking death was too exhausting, and having to listen to his rambling made it impossible to hold out any longer. Seeing no response from me, Ling Yao thought I really was never going to wake up. He cried even more bitterly, and even called Xiao Luzi inside to have him prepare for my funeral. Xiao Luzi looked at me lying on the bed, supposedly dead, yet sleeping with a face full of peace. His face turned red from holding back his reaction, but not daring to expose me, he could only comply. The next day, I initiated my second plan. The people I had arranged quickly came in to carry me away. The lead maid deliberately said,
Young master, she loved beauty most of all when she was alive. If too much time passes and her appearance is ruined and her body begins to smell, she will be very sad in the afterlife.
I had already planned everything out. Once I was buried, Ling Yao's heart would be completely broken, and he would no longer be obsessed with Liu A'cui. Then, I would arrange for people to dig me up by the time I returned to the palace and continue being my empress, enjoying a peaceful and comfortable life. The coffin had a special mechanism for ventilation, so I wouldn't suffocate to death. To secure my throne as empress, suffering this little bit was nothing, but Ling Yao gently caressed my brow and eyes, and after a moment pursed his lips and said, No need to go through all that trouble. Just cremate her. That way, her ashes can stay by my side forever. I was so shocked, I almost rose from the dead. The maid was so frightened, she stammered in protest.
Young master, this absolutely will not do. Cremation pollutes the environment, and it will scatter her soul. Qihua was kind-hearted and loved all living things. She wouldn't want to burden the earth, and she certainly wouldn't want her soul to be scattered.
But Ling Yao remained unmoved, his tone firm.
Men, Prepare plenty of firewood and oil. We must burn Miss A'cui completely to ashes, leaving not a single trace behind.
In my heart, I cursed that quack doctor 800 times. This was all your rotten idea. Now look what happened. I'm really about to be burned. I was carried to an open area, surrounded by firewood, with nowhere to hide. The maid quietly leaned close to my ear and said anxiously,
Your Highness, this is a matter of life and death. Don't sleep anymore. You're really going to be burned.
I feel so wronged. It is not that I don't want to wake up, but I had been lying down for so long that I was numb and couldn't move. Besides, I had to act like I had just woken up, so I wouldn't give the game away. Just as I was preparing to rise from the dead, the bonfire was already burning fiercely, the heat wave rushing toward my face, nearly burning me. Right at that moment, Ling Yao suddenly scooped me up in his arms and strode far away from the bonfire. He leaned close to my ear, his voice deep and stern, carrying a hint of amusement and helplessness.
Still refusing to wake up, Liu A'cui.
My heart skipped a beat. What? He knows I'm not dead. I snapped my eyes open, pushed Ling Yao away, and ran toward the restroom, completely throwing my image out the window. If I didn't go now, I was going to burst. That would be worse than being burned alive. Ling Yao laughed and called out behind me.
Run slower. Don't trip. I'm not going to punish you.
I began to wolf down the food on the table. Between mouthfuls, I asked, when did you find out I wasn't dead? Ling Yao rolled his eyes at me, his tone laced with helplessness.
Your breathing was steady. Your pulse was normal, and your chest was still rising and falling. Do you take me for a fool? Besides, I've studied medicine a bit myself. I checked your pulse long ago, and knew you were faking. I just purposely didn't expose you, to see what other tricks you could pull.
I grumbled to myself. An emperor is indeed not easily fooled. He scolded me again.
Medicine harms the body. I purposely didn't expose you, because I wanted to teach you a lesson. Do you know what crime it is to deceive the emperor?
I already held a grudge against him for taking revenge on my family back then, and ruining my betrothal. In a fit of anger, I looked at the small knife hanging on the wall, and with a mix of cowardice and courage, I drew it out and tossed it in front of him. Go ahead. Do with me as you please, whether to kill or to torture. Anyway, I did lie to you. If you want to kill me, I accept it. I closed my eyes, ready to face death. But in my heart, I was praying, please don't kill me. I haven't enjoyed enough of my wealth and glory yet. Ling Yao, however, let out a helpless laugh. He walked over, ruffled my hair, and said in a doting tone,
I will let it slide this time. Seeing that you know you were wrong, I shall spare you once. But if I ever find out you are hiding anything else from me again, I will throw you into the dungeons and never let you out of the palace for the rest of your life.
As soon as he finished speaking, a gentle kiss landed on my forehead. He whispered,
If you were gone, who else would I find to love me? Who else would play along with me?
My face suddenly grew hot, and my heart beat a little faster. Just as I was about to say something else, I suddenly remembered something. I had forgotten that I was still the Empress. By the time I realized this and chased after him, Ling Yao was already nowhere to be seen. Oh no, if he finds out I am the Empress, will he be angry that I lied to him for so long? Will he depose me? The day he finds out I am the Empress will probably be the day I end up in prison. I hurriedly rushed back to the Su residence to ask my father to secure a death exemption plaque for me, just in case. But my father didn't have much political merit, nor was he particularly favored in court, so he naturally couldn't bring himself to ask for such a favor. What? Did you cause some trouble? My father sensed that something was wrong, his eyes widening in shock.
No wonder, the servant said. They saw you at the villa in the west of the city. Are you having an affair? How dare you cheat on the emperor behind his back? Do you have a death wish?
I was completely speechless. I couldn't even be bothered to explain things to him. I just brushed off my sleeves and walked away. Explaining it to him would have been a waste of breath anyway. The more he heard, the more confused he would get. The exhaustion of traveling through the night suddenly caught up with me. As soon as I returned to the palace, I fell ill. This time, I was actually sick, not faking it. Under pressure from the Empress Dowager, Ling Yao had no choice but to come and visit me. Fortunately, even though I was sick, my mind was still clear. I knew I couldn't completely lay my cards on the table with him just yet, at least not until I recovered, so I could think of a way to handle it. I covered my face with the blanket, claiming that I had caught a cold and couldn't be exposed to the wind. Luzi placed the herbal medicine on the table and said respectfully,
Your Majesty, please rest and recover in peace. His Majesty is busy with official duties and said he won't be coming in person. He has ordered me to look after your Majesty on his behalf.
I secretly let out a sigh of relief. Why didn't he say say so earlier, I was suffocating. My nose was already stuffed up, and hiding under the blanket only made it harder to breathe. I got up to pour myself some water to drink, when suddenly, there was a commotion at the door. I looked up and saw Ling Yao, his eyes wide with shock. I gasped sharply and instantly burst into a violent fit of coughing, nearly coughing up my lungs. Ling Yao looked at me, then glanced at the empty bed, and quickly rushed to my side, asking anxiously,
A'cui, where did you hide the Empress? Is she still alive?
My heart skipped a beat. Great, his old habit was acting up again. I wailed in my heart, of all times. Why did he have to show up now? He just had to catch me off guard while I was sick. Deciding to just let things take their course, I simply flashed a weak smile at Ling Yao. Your Majesty, do you think I look like the Empress? Ling Yao grew tense and quickly waved his hands.
Stop joking around. The Empress is sick. How could she be here? The entire Juggle Palace is filled with the Empress's people. If you've hidden her away, you'll be executed. Hand her over quickly, and I shall spare your life.
Frowning, he paced back and forth. After a moment, he pulled a medallion from his robe and handed it to me.
I shall first bestow upon you an immunity medallion. As for the Empress, when you are before her, you must apologize properly and beg for her forgiveness.
Looking at the immunity medallion, I was both amused and annoyed. This was the very thing he had just said he would use to punish me, and now he was using it to bribe me. What a double-standard emperor. Looking at his dead, serious expression, my vision went black, and I fainted right into his arms. Coupled with my weakness from the illness, I simply couldn't hold on any longer. Just then, the imperial physician who came to treat me arrived. Seeing this scene, he quickly bowed. He called out,
Your Majesty, Your Highness, this humble servant pays respects to Your Majesty and to Her Imperial Highness.
Ling Yao gripped the physician's hand, his voice urgent.
What did you call her? Say it again.
Terrified, the physician's hands shook as he stammered.
This humble servant called her Her Imperial Highness. This is indeed Empress Su. Your Majesty, what is wrong?
Ling Yao collapsed limply into a chair. His face was filled with disbelief as he muttered,
Impossible. How could she be the Empress? She is A'cui. She is my A'cui.
Still refusing to accept it, he summoned dozens of palace maids, but the answers he received were all the same.
Replying to Your Majesty, she has always been the Empress. She has never changed.
Ling Yao nearly fainted himself. The entire Juggle Palace instantly fell into utter chaos. I woke up during the night. Ling Yao was sitting by the bedside, staring intently at me. His tone carried a hint of coldness.
I demand an explanation, Su Qinghuan. Why did you lie to me? Why did you pretend to be Liu A'cui to make a fool out of me?
After taking my medicine, my mind was much clearer. I knew there was no escaping this. During this time, Ling Yao had been completely played by me. As an all-powerful emperor, he naturally couldn't tolerate such humiliation. Anyone would be furious in his position. I pinched my own thigh hard. My eyes welled up with tears from the pain as I said aggrievedly, Your Majesty, this is all your fault. If you hadn't mistaken my identity time and again, treating me as a maid or a consort, I wouldn't have lied about being Liu A'cui just to avoid trouble. I was forced into a corner. Think about it. Every time I stood before you, you didn't recognize me. You even tried to bring me into your harem over and over again. If I hadn't pretended to be someone else, was I supposed to tell you that I am the very Empress you dismissed as vulgar and neglected all this time? Ling Yao kept a cold face, but he still took a handkerchief to wipe away my tears. Yet, his words remained sharp.
From now on, introduce yourself first whenever you see me. Do you hear me?
His wiping hurt, and I felt so aggrieved that in the heat of the moment I blurted out, But the moment I see you, I am completely captivated by you. My heart beats so fast it feels like it is going to jump out, and my mind is filled with nothing but your face. How could I possibly remember to introduce myself? As soon as those words left my mouth, a dead silence fell over the hall. Even the sound of the wind outside the window could be heard clearly. Ling Yao's hand wiping my tears froze in midair, the handkerchief still hovering by my cheek. The tips of his ears turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye, and even the base of his ears flushed a soft pink. His eyes darted away, not daring to look into my tearful eyes. He stiffly averted his gaze, his tone softening completely.
That is somewhat understandable. My striking presence indeed makes it easy for one to lose their composure.
After a pause, he put on a stern face again to warn me, though his tone had lost all of its intimidation.
Those private thoughts I shared with you, the ones back at the villa, you are not allowed to repeat them to anyone. If word gets out, I will punish you by making you copy the commandments for women 100 times.
Mentioning this instantly made me angry. I slapped his hand away, puffed out my cheeks, and retorted, "How dare you say that, Your Majesty? You said plenty of bad things about me back then. You said I was vulgar and boring, and that I wasn't as gentle as Liu A'cui. You were the one who started it all. Why am I the only one being punished?" Left speechless by my retort, Ling Yao let out 2 dry coughs. His eyes drifted to the teacup on the table as he stiffly changed the subject.
Cough. Let's not talk about this. Drink some water. If you keep crying, your voice will go hoarse. Then you'll blame me for bullying you again.
I pouted, picked up the teacup, and took a sip. To my surprise, he took the opportunity to lie down on my bed. He even nudged himself further inside and patted the space beside him.
I am tired. Accompany me to rest for a while.
Hesitantly, I leaned closer to his chest. I could clearly hear his rapid heartbeat. It was even faster than mine. His warm breath fell upon my forehead. My face instantly flushed with embarrassment. Your Majesty, why don't? You should return to the Hall of Mental Cultivation. But Ling Yao suddenly pressed down on my shoulders. He wrapped the blanket tightly around both of us. His tone was mock serious, but the tips of his ears were still red.
What is there to panic about? I wouldn't go so far as to lay a hand on a sick person. I am just worried you might run a fever again in the middle of the night, with no one to care for you.
I buried my face in his chest, secretly stifling a laugh. This face-blind emperor, with his sharp tongue and soft heart, clearly just wanted to hold me. Yet he made up such a clumsy excuse. The news of the emperor staying the night at Chengel Palace spread throughout the entire imperial palace in less than an hour. In the past, this would have been a common occurrence, but it just so happened that a few days ago, Ling Yao, for the sake of a commoner woman, Liu A'cui, had a huge row with the court officials, argued fiercely with the Empress Dowager, and even threatened to depose the Empress. Yet now, he was staying overnight in the Empress's palace. This massive contrast caused a huge stir throughout the entire palace. The eunuchs and palace maids gossiped in private, and even Minister Lai sent someone specifically to inquire whether Liu A'cui had fallen out of favor. Early the next morning, the Empress Dowager made an angry visit to Changel Palace. As soon as she entered, she saw Ling Yao holding me, sleeping soundly, not even noticing her arrival. Seeing this, I quickly took the opportunity to slip out of bed. While tidying my clothes, I made an excuse. Imperial Mother, I shall go and change my attire. The Empress Dowager was trembling with rage. She glared at him.
Do you think taking a wife is child's play? Qinghuan is a good girl. She has a good family background and a gentle disposition. To be matched with a face-blind emperor like you is truly a pity. You should not, out of spite toward me, toy with her feelings like this and treat her as a substitute.
Ling Yao sat up straight with a serious look on his face.
Mother, I am not acting out of spite, nor am I treating her as a substitute. I truly care for Qinghuan. I used to mistake her for others, which caused her to suffer so much grievance. From now on, I only want to make it up to her.
The Empress Dowager was taken aback for a moment, then sighed, her eyes filled with helplessness.
Fine, I can no longer control you. Whom you marry or do not marry is none of my business. But before that, you must settle Qinghuan properly and not break her heart again.
Hearing this, Ling Yao felt he was suffering from his own undoing. He quickly took the Empress Dowager's hand to explain.
Mother, you have misunderstood. The Liu A'cui from before was actually Qinghuan. She deceived me on purpose. Qinghuan is intelligent and beautiful. She has always been the one my heart desires. There was never any substitute.
The Empress Dowager's gaze instantly turned into one reserved for a scoundrel. She rolled her eyes.
Your heart certainly changes quickly. Just a few days ago, you insisted on marrying no one but Liu A'cui. Today you say Qinghuan is the one your heart desires. This reminds me of the late emperor. He too fell in love with every new face he saw.
Ling Yao's face instantly flushed red. He knew that the Empress Dowager's words were triggered by memories of the late emperor's past, leaving his heart filled with helplessness. From then on, the Empress Dowager summoned me to stay at Signing Palace every night, under the pretext of keeping her company and chatting. But in truth, she was afraid Ling Yao would bully me again. One day, I went to pay my respects to the Empress Dowager, as usual. While serving tea, I casually mentioned, Mother, the Emperor has been handling memorials late into the night recently, and often suffers from severe headaches. I would like to bring him a bowl of soothing soup tonight, so he can get some proper rest. To my surprise, the Empress Dowager instantly flared up. She slapped the table and said angrily,
If he has a headache, he should see the imperial physician. Why is he looking for you? Did he force you again?
She was even more furious than I was. Pointing in the direction of the Hall of Mental Cultivation, she ranted,
What does that rascal take you for? One moment he wants to depose the Empress for a commoner woman, and the next he pretends to care so much about you. Who would believe his nonsense?
Left with no choice, I had to tell her everything that had happened recently, from pretending to be Liu A'cui to deceive Ling Yao, to Ling Yao seeing through my identity, and then to all the ways he had treated me with genuine sincerity. I told the Empress Dowager everything, down to the last detail. She fell silent for a long time after listening.
You say the Emperor can remember your face? Impossible. He can't even remember me, his own mother. Last time, he even mistook my personal maid for me and handed me a candied hawthorn stick.
The Empress Dowager sighed, patting my hand with earnest concern.
Qinghuan, I advise you to just accept the emperor's harem. It is not that I don't care about you, but an emperor's heart is the most unpredictable of all. Their words cannot be taken seriously if you give him your true heart. In the end, you will be the only one who gets hurt.
The Empress Dowager truly couldn't bear to see me go down the wrong path. 2 days later, she secretly arranged for a woman in pink, who looked extremely similar to me, to disguise herself as a maid and deliver soothing soup to the imperial study, wanting to test if Ling Yao could really tell me apart. That day, Ling Yao was reviewing memorials in the imperial study. The woman in red wore heavy makeup with thick red lipstick, deliberately mimicking my eyes and expression, yet exuding an intentional, seductive charm. She walked forward with graceful, swaying steps and said in a high-pitched voice, "Your Majesty, I have brought you some soothing soup." Ling Yao looked up, and indeed, he froze. But after just a second, he shook his head, recognizing at a glance that the person before him was not me.
You do look remarkably like the Empress. However, the Empress is a natural beauty who never wears such heavy makeup, nor does she speak in such a pinched voice. Furthermore, when she hands me soup, would subconsciously raise her pinky finger. You didn't.
In fact, this woman in red was me. The Empress Dowager had specifically asked a famous makeup artist in the palace to change my makeup and taught me to change my tone of voice. We thought that even if Xiao Luzi came, he would mistake me for someone else. I didn't expect Ling Yao to observe so closely. I deliberately pretended to be coquettish, stamped my foot. "Doesn't your Majesty just like the Empress's face? I look just like her. Why can't I do?" Ling Yao put down the memorial, smiled gently, stood up, and walked over to me. He reached out and pinched my cheek.
Who says you can't? Of course you can.
As he spoke, he reached out to wrap his arm around my waist, making a move to kiss me. Right at that moment, the door to the imperial study was pushed open. The Empress Dowager stood at the door with a grim face. He said coldly,
Ling Yao, you lost this bet.
But Ling Yao didn't panic at all. Instead, he leaned close to my ear and whispered with a wronged look,
Empress, say something. Mother has misunderstood me again.
Both the Empress Dowager and I froze on the spot. The fake angry scolding I had prepared in advance, accusing Ling Yao of being unfaithful, was completely useless now. Not a single word of it could be used. I wailed in my heart, "It is over. It is all over." Who knew he had recognized me long ago? I hadn't prepared any other lines at all. I had no choice but to scratch the back of my head and look at the Empress Dowager with an innocent face. "Mother, you should speak instead. I don't know what to say." The Empress Dowager was indeed someone who had seen great storms. She quickly calmed down, looked at Ling Yao, and asked,
You knew she was Qinghuan all along.
Ling Yao nodded, his tone incredibly serious.
How could I fall in the same place twice? Since I exposed her identity last time, I have been looking at her portrait every day. I remember all her little habits and preferences clearly.
It is no exaggeration to say that even if she turned to ashes, I could still recognize her by the scent of her incense, let alone just changing her makeup and tone of voice. Ling Yao stood tall and spoke in a deep, solemn voice.
Empress Mother, I am not like the late Emperor. The late Emperor broke your heart because he couldn't tell people apart. But I can distinguish everything clearly, and yet I only want to keep Qinghuan in my heart.
Looking at his sincere eyes, the Empress Dowager finally relented and let out a sigh.
Very well. It was my own obsession that ran too deep, and I misjudged you. Qinghuan, after tonight, you should return to Changle Palace. Accompany the Emperor well.
That night, Ling Yao and I returned to Changle Palace. While playing around, we rolled onto the imperial bed. Afterward, lying in his arms, I poked his chest and had a sudden thought. Why has Mother been so anxious lately? First testing you, then advising me. Could it be that I am her real daughter and you were just picked up from somewhere? Ling Yao gave me a sidelong glance.
Wangxing must have bought you. Those ridiculous storybooks again. You're always thinking about the most absurd things. If you talk any more nonsense, I will punish you by making you copy memorials.
I giggled, stuck my tongue out, and stopped asking, but Ling Yao took the initiative to speak, explaining to me the reason behind the Empress Dowager's unusual behavior. It turned out that the late Emperor also had severe face blindness. From the very first moment he saw the Empress Dowager, he felt she was different from everyone else. When he ascended the throne, he declared before all the officials that he would only marry the Empress Dowager in this lifetime. But later, a rival state sent a beautiful princess to sue for peace. Seeing that she resembled the Empress Dowager in some ways, the late emperor gradually fell in love with that princess. Yet he still told the Empress Dowager that she was the only one in his heart. Later, when the rebels attacked, The Empress Dowager and the princess, in order to protect the late emperor, were both captured by the rebels. To mock the late emperor, the rebels forced him to choose one of them to save. The late emperor stared at the two of them for a long time, but in the end, he failed to recognize the Empress Dowager. He blurted out,
Of course I will save the princess. My empress is still waiting safely in the palace. How could I let you find someone to impersonate her so easily?
The Empress Dowager's heart died on the spot. Summoning every ounce of her strength, she escaped from the rebels. By the time she returned to the imperial palace, she discovered she was pregnant, and that child was Ling Yao. Because of this, from the moment Ling Yao was born, he was privately suspected by the court officials of being a bastard of unknown paternity. He stumbled his way through childhood into his teens, and only with the help of his uncle did he successfully ascend the throne. On the day the late emperor passed away, only the Empress Dowager was in his room. She asked him,
On the day the rebels besieged the city, did you actually recognize me or not?
But before the late emperor could answer, he drew his last breath. This matter became a knot in the Empress Dowager's heart for many years. Hearing all this made my heart ache. I hugged Ling Yao around the waist and said earnestly, If I ever have a change of heart in the future, I will definitely tell you and never lie to you. If you have a change of heart, tell me early too. We will part ways peacefully. We'll split the palace in half. I'll live in Changle Palace, and you'll live in Yangshan Hall. We won't disturb each other. Ling Yao held my hand tightly, his tone firm and beyond doubt.
Wishful thinking? The entire palace is mine. You are mine too. Don't even think about separating in this lifetime. I am not like the late emperor. Back when I still couldn't tell you apart from others, I had already fallen for you. That feeling of my heart fluttering is something I will never forget in this life.
I deliberately pulled a face and rolled my eyes. How are you any different? Don't think I don't know. Wang Qing told me a long time ago. On the very first day of our marriage, you said right in front of my father that you wanted to expand your harem and select beautiful women from all over the world. Ling Yao scratched his head with a look of regret, his tone sounding aggrieved.
That was just the education I received back then. Besides, back then, every time I saw you, I thought you were a completely new person every time. And every single time, I fell for you all over again. I even suffered for a long time, thinking I was just a fickle person who fell in love with everyone I saw.
Still unmoved, I continued to press him. Then why were you so set on marrying Liu A'cui back then? And almost drove Minister Li to his death? Ling Yao suddenly held out his hand, revealing a large bite mark on his wrist. He said with a pitiful look,
You have the nerve to ask. I've been extremely sensitive to pain since I was a child. That time you disguised yourself as a maid and bit me. The pain lingered for days, and it was through that pain that I remembered you. It was so hard to find someone I liked and could actually remember. How could I possibly let you go?
Looking at the bite mark on his wrist, I smiled awkwardly and quickly waved my hand. It was all a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Let's not bring it up anymore. Who told you to keep mistaking me for someone else back then? Ling Yao kissed my cheek, then leaned in close to my face, his eyes so tender they could melt water. He asked softly,
Do you remember anything now about the very first time we met?
I frowned and thought for a long time, but still shook my head. Confused, I pushed his face away. I can't remember. No, wait. I've never met you before that. Ling Yao smiled, reached out to ruffle my hair, and called my name softly.
Qinghuan, do you really not remember me? Years ago, I traveled in disguise and passed by your family's Su manor. Your father blocked my way, insisting that I fulfill my promise to appoint him as the prime minister.
Ling Yao had explained helplessly.
Beloved Minister Su, I have already explained this to you. That promise was originally meant for Minister Li, but you got caught in the rain that day and changed into Minister Li's clothes. I mistook your identity and made that promise off the cuff.
But my father still refused to let it go, putting his hands on his hips and acting shamelessly.
So what if you mistook my identity? Does mistaking the person mean you don't have to keep your promise? To earn this promise, your humble servant stayed up late working every single day and even got quite a few gray hairs. Who is going to compensate me for my mental distress?
Knowing he was in the wrong, Ling Yao had no choice but to compromise.
Then make another request. As long as it is not too outrageous, I can grant it to you.
Since I can't be the prime minister, your humble servant wants to be the emperor's father-in-law.
Ling Yao froze on the spot and said helplessly,
Minister Su, when it comes to relationships, I am not that devoted. Are you sure you want to marry your daughter to me?
Your humble servant has 7 daughters, each as beautiful as a flower. Surely one of them will catch your majesty's eye.
Ling Yao flicked his sleeves and left in anger, but he happened to pass by my courtyard and saw a young woman throwing a tantrum at her tutor. The tutor wanted her to embroider mandarin ducks, but she embroidered a crooked mythical beast instead. Only later did he find out I was embroidering a dragon. It was just so ugly that the tutor, furious, wanted to wrap her knuckles, but she stiffened her neck and argued back. Embroidering mandarin ducks is so cliché. I embroidered a mythical beast. It looks much better than mandarin ducks. Ling Yao laughed to himself. This girl is quite interesting. There is a good show to watch. Unexpectedly, the young woman turned and left in anger. Not noticing the stone under her feet, she crashed headfirst into Ling Yao's arms and even glared at him fiercely. Who are you? Why are you blocking my way? As she spoke, she casually stuffed the embroidered handkerchief in her hand into Ling Yao's grasp. Here, take this as my apology. Don't follow me. With that, she ran off in a huff, even accidentally stepping on Ling Yao's foot. Ling Yao looked at the girl's retreating figure, then looked at the ugly embroidered handkerchief in his hand. Curious, he asked the attendant beside him.
Who was that just now?
Replying to your highness, that is Minister Su's legitimate daughter, Su Qinghuan.
The wind blew softly, carrying a faint scent of sweet osmanthus. I looked at Ling Yao's gentle eyes, and that afternoon suddenly flashed through my mind. The sun was just right because I couldn't embroider the mandarin ducks well. I was scolded by my tutor and ran out in a huff, crashing into a strange man's arms and even stepping on his foot, and casually stuffed the ugly embroidered handkerchief into his hands. So it turns out our fate had already begun a year ago. Ling Yao took my hand and said softly,
From that day on, I remember. The girl who stepped on me and stuffed that ugly handkerchief into my hands. I just didn't expect that after you entered the palace, I would mistake you for someone else time and time again. Fortunately, in the end, I still found you.